essentially, we're going to talk about some self-recording best practices. We're going to deal with camera, we're going to deal with lighting, and we're going to deal with sound. Some of you might have a lot of experience with these type of things. Some of you might have very little experience with these things. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, or feel free to save them for the end. There'll be time for Q&A. I'll try to go through and talk through the things in order. If something really pressing comes up, let me know and we can get to it in the moment. Otherwise, I'll see you at the end and we can chat about the things that come up. All right, so here we are. Camera, very important things. For the camera, make sure you double check this. I always default to 3/4 shot that looks like our figure right here, but there are some places that want a full body shot. So please double check. If you don't know and you think, I'm not really sure, some places might want a full body shot, some places might want 3/4. What do I do? I would say record full body. That way you can please everybody. If you're somebody that might want to later crop in, if you do a full body recording and you might want to crop in, record in 4K because that'll give you twice the resolution size and that'll let you zoom in if you need to crop in. So in case you're wondering, I like 3/4. It seems to be the standard that a lot of folks are going to, but I know that a couple of institutions in particular wanted full body. So to do that, I suggest positioning your camera, your computer, your phone, your iPad as close as you can to chest level. If you get it too low, you get this, or like, that effect where it looks like you're recording it on your laptop. If you get it too high, then it looks like, that kind of effect and it looks a little strange. But if you can get that to relatively about chest height, what that'll do is it won't catch you under. Anybody who's ever watched the Met Opera broadcasts, that pit rail camera, while it's a cool angle, it doesn't really look great on anybody when they breathe in and they sing and the larynx drops and the pharynx opens. It just kind of makes this area look not awesome. So if you get that to that place, that will help you. I recommend placing the camera lens slightly to your stage right or slightly to your stage left. If you don't have a preference, if you put it slightly to your stage right, then you get a nice angle that sometimes can even cut off your pianist. Not that we want to exclude them, but sometimes they don't want to be on the frame and you can just get yourself. What that enables you to do is be able to focus forward without looking directly into the camera. When you're making these recordings, what you want to remember is you're not recording, you're not making a recording. That's a different process where you lay everything down, you go back into the studio days later, you have your punch list of places that you want to improve. That's not what we're doing here. We're recording an audition. And so like any audition, you never want to stare down the audience, right? It'll do a couple of things. It'll make them uncomfortable. It will, with somebody like me, make me want to engage with you in the scene. And in either case, you're kind of taking us out of that audition mode. So if you have that camera just slightly to your right, to your left, your preference, it enables you to have a nice direct focus to your other. It enables you to go into your memories and the things that happened. It enables you to go into the things that might happen that you're dreaming about and kind of come back to your other without looking like directly into the lens. A little more on that later. And you want to find the distance where you can frame yourself in the camera, right? You're probably going to record in one room. Maybe you have a couple of different rooms. You can record all this data that we're going to talk about for each of those rooms. So typically you're about 3 or 4 feet away. Depending on the camera gear that you're using, you might be able to zoom in, zoom out. If you're using one of these, which I recommend for our level of work, you can set rather than zoom here, you can set your lens size. Talk about that in a moment. All that makes sense. For your background, probably not something like I have right now. I'm just sitting in my rehearsal room. It's rather busy. A lot of people now, after going through the pandemic, have a green screen or a blue screen or a background or a neutral wall. Find something like that You know, if you have a wall that has a bunch of pictures on it, you can take them off. You know, so you have a nice neutral background. You don't want it to be busy. Speaking of busy, your attire. You want to feel comfortable. You want to look good. You want to feel great. You want to avoid things that are distracting on video, right? Things like that are stripes and patterns that can pick up like some video distortion or move strangely. Solid colors work well on video. Jewelry, things that sparkle or catch a lot of the light that you might have, just things to avoid. If you wonder if it works or if it doesn't work, put it on. Use the trial and error method, which I think is the best method we have. Stand in front of the camera, move around a little bit. If you get strange aberrations or it looks really weird or the color looks wonderful in real life, but it just doesn't look right on the camera, find something else. Your basic lighting, we will talk more about that in a few minutes here. So I'm not sure what somebody's calling me there. We'll talk more about that in a few minutes. But for your lighting, you want to be sure that you are illuminated, right? If you're in a place where you can have background and other lighting sources, you can definitely use that. But some definite no-nos. Never stand with your back to a window or any other bright source behind you, because it's really hard to combat that. If anybody's ever had to try to do a Zoom lesson or you've got a light fixture in your apartment or your office that's behind you, it's really hard to get a source powerful enough. You can get basic things like halo lights or ring lights or other more expensive things. Actually, household lamps, if you take the lampshade off, can work really nicely. With the lampshade on, it's not really going to do much. With the lampshade off, it gives you a little more. We'll talk about that a little more as well. Focal points, extremely important. When you frame yourself in this 3/4, you want to make sure that just like in an audition, you're not looking not only right at the camera, but you're not looking too far to the right that it looks like we might actually be looking at somebody or something or someone on our stage right. You also don't want to look too far to the left so that it looks like we're looking at somebody or someone to our left. To determine that, I recommend a similar process that you all might use when you're actually in a live venue. It goes something like this. You stand center of the camera as if you might be standing center stage. You put your arms out and you might find the corners of the room and say, okay, here are the corners of the venue. My fingertips are pointing there. If I look to it, it looks like I'm still within focus. If I look beyond it, it's going to look like I'm looking past the point. Now, every camera lens is a different venue, right? And the way to determine how you set your focal points, you can use a friend or a buddy. Like if you're recording and 2 or more people need to record, have somebody stand behind the camera, have them watch you while you look, and they can say, okay, wait, keep looking, keep looking, keep looking. Okay, right there. And then they can say, what are you looking at? Say, I'm looking at this thing. And you put a piece of painter's tape on the wall. And then you look to the stage left. And they can say, wait, keep looking, wait, come back. Okay, right there. What are you looking at? And you tell them, and they put another piece of painter's tape on the wall. And then now you have your right and your left focal points so that you know when you're recording, you have your perimeters and your parameters of how far right, how far left you can go before it looks like you've gone beyond and you're actually looking at somebody to your right or your left. Similarly, you want to set the parameter and the angle of your up and down focus. I'm on a computer right now. I'm traveling. I don't have my normal setup. So on a laptop, the camera sits at the top of the computer. I can look to the right of the screen. I can look to the left of the screen. Those give me quick points. I can look to the bottom of the screen, and I can look to an imaginary screen height above. If I look much higher, it's going to look like the sky is falling. If I look much farther than the right of the screen, it's going to start to look like I look to the stage right. If I look much past the left of the screen, it's going to look like I'm looking to stage left. If I look much past the bottom of the screen, it's going to look like I'm loperduta-ing and trying to find the pin. So all that is to say, whatever camera you're using, and again, I recommend this, and I'll talk about why in a moment. Have a friend, or you can also do it yourself. It just takes a little longer. You've got the camera pointed at you. You're looking at whatever is behind it, likely a wall. You simply put marks of painter's tape on that wall. If there happen to be bulletin boards, bulletin boards. If it happens to be a wall where there are things and you can say, oh, there's a picture hanging right there. I can look at that picture of Verdi, or I can look at that clock hanging on the wall, whatever it might be. You know that those points are those points. You know that your camera is going on that spike mark on that tripod, so it always is in the same place. You have your spike mark for where you stand so that you are framed as you want to be, either this 3/4 or your full body, so that you know when that camera is there and when your feet are there, you can look to that mark, to this mark, to that mark, to that mark, and look like you're still in the realm of communication. That's very, very important. A lot of folks don't do that, and they end up either it's too constricted and they look like they're trying not to look around, or it's too all over the place and we don't really get to see what they're doing. That brings me to the point about the cameras. Unless you want to spend thousands of dollars on cameras, and if you do, put it in the chat or send me a message and I can advise you on cameras to buy. These things are just as good as anything you're going to get. The level of technology that you have, as long as you have a tripod that will hold your phone, and as long as you clean the lenses, because it gets grody and gritty and weird, and like a fuzzy pocket lens looks terrible, but a nice clean lens looks beautiful. You can shoot in 4K and it'll look just like a movie. There are limits to what these things can do, but if you're not spending thousands of dollars on a camera and thousands of dollars on lenses, you're really not going to see the difference. So that's just, we could argue about it. Other people might have different opinions, but as one who owns very expensive camera gear and as one who just has like an iPhone 12, this will do just fine. Okay, so there's that much. That's the general idea with the camera. Let us move forward to lighting. Now, this is the most advanced lighting that you could have in a self-recording situation. 4 points of lighting, right? You've got your key light, number one, on a slight angle, keying you in. On the side that is not the side of the camera, to look professional, to look slightly cinematic, you want your camera slightly offset from the side of your main key light, right? It shoots the dark side. It's a cinematic technique. If you've ever seen crappy looking TV that doesn't look cinematic and awesome, that's because they're shooting in direct light or ambient light. Like it has no leading line. There's no design to it. There's no sculpting or shadowing. So if you want to start to get artistic and see what you can do, I'm just in a room. I've got some lights on. Even my phone, if I took out here and, put on my flashlight and got a little bit of light here and put the camera here, it's going to give you a little bit of that separation and setup. So key light, very important. It might be your only light. Fill light, number two. That fills in a little bit of the shadows. It's less intense. It might be some ambient light. It might be the open window, over there that like pulls in a little bit of light. So it's not like a dark room with the flashlight on you. That'll have a specific look that you don't necessarily want. Then you've got number three, your backlight. It's often called a hair light. It's used on television. If you ever see like a side cutaway shot of, somebody talking to Kamala Harris, you'll see the light from behind them that separates them, that gives them a little bit of pop away from the surface. You can have a lamp without a shade behind you off the screen, which will give you a little bit of pop and separation. with your ring light out here off screen, giving you some light while you have like, you know, the regular room light on. That will give you a little separation. If you want to get a little more fancy, you can have a specific light for your background. That should be directional, right? Ideally, all of these lights are directional, but if you've got like a desk light or something with a shade or something like that, like the Pixar light, if you turn that low, out of frame, but kind of uplighting your background, it'll give you a little bit further separation. You don't have to do all of these things. This is just meant to show if you have the time, if you have the inclination, if you have enough lamps, or if you want to order enough LED panel lights or halo lights, you can pull all of this together. Not all rooms will allow for it. Not all budgets and not all circumstances will allow for it. So sometimes you just have to go with what you have. The ring lights or the panel lights, they're fairly affordable, and it's never a bad idea to have access to one of those and a stand on which you can have them, because you could even turn, you know, the fluorescent lights in a room with a powerful enough one of those gives you better looking lighting. In a pinch, it's remarkable how awesome daylight is. So now these windows are obviously not daylight right now, so it wouldn't do me any good. But the same rule that says I don't want to put my back to that window if it's daylight could also say if it is daylight, I could put the camera over by the window and I could stand relatively close to the window, and I'm going to get a beautiful, nicely balanced mid-Kelvin temperature lighting, you know, not too much up towards 6,000 where it's too blue and cold, not too much down towards 2,500 where it looks like I've lit my recording with candles, but a nice kind of balance in terms of warm and cool lighting. So in a pinch, you have no lights or you got to make a recording, you've always got this, you've got your portable stand, and you're able to make that recording using natural light. So those are the things with lighting. If you were going to start to cut things and get less and less involved, I would say, great, start with number 4. Cut your background light because the ambient light in the room is going to cover it. You need to cut the next thing, cut your backlight or your hair light because you'll already pop a little bit from the background because you're in front of it and you've framed your camera. If you need to cut another, cut your fill light. And then, you know, if you're cutting the fill, if the key light looks too directional, just move it more directly behind the camera. You'll have normal light. So those are sort of the levels and the tiers of how you can approach those things. There are expensive lights that people make. You can invest in C-stands and, you know, $300-400 lighting fixtures. You don't really need them. If you want to make a quality difference and, you know, you don't want a lot of strange harsh light, Newer, the company NEEWER and other companies like that, you can go on Amazon and get like the flat panel lights. You can get a bicolor that drift between degrees Kelvin. So you can go very towards 6,000. It's like very bluish, whitish, cold light, or you can go all the way down to like around 2,300 Kelvin. So it's very warm. If you had 2 of those and you bought like 2 soft boxes to put on them, that'll give you beautiful light. And you've probably spent like $40, $50. So it all depends on that. But again, a nice lamp without the shade does the trick too. So that's a little bit on lighting. Sound, microphone placement, very important, right? You want it to be about 3 or 4 feet away from you, distance. You want it to be above your head. So it's going to be anywhere 3 or 4 feet away from you, above your head, 6 feet to 8 feet. If you're really tall, maybe it's 9 feet tall. Right? There's some people who are very tall. I have a colleague who's 6'7". So when he records, it's got to be about 9 feet tall. You want it over you and up above you, not right here, not lower than you, not too far away. If it's lower than you, you get a little bit of a loss, like some of the parcels kind of travel that way. It just gives a nice close miking sound. If you get it about 3 to 4 feet away from you and about 6 to 8 feet up, it'll be out of the shot. Test it. you know, because if my iPencil were the microphone, you don't want like that. You don't want to see the microphone. Make sure it's high enough, but you can see like this is very close to me, closer than you're probably going to have it. It's probably going to be about like this. But if I have that there, you can't see it. If it's there, you can see it. So that's where you want that microphone. Your piano accompaniment, if you have a live pianist, mwah. If you don't have a live pianist, stand in front of a piano, stand in the crook of the piano if you can. Put the speaker somewhere out of frame, maybe on the floor, maybe nearby somewhere, and you can at least have the piano to pretend that you're singing. You have your crookography. You know, you've got when you put your hand on the piano, you've got all that stuff. So you can use that to your advantage. If you don't have that available, find a place, you know, for that accompaniment. The better the speaker you can have, the better the sound. A lot of people these days have, you know, the JBL, some version starting from like the little cylinder that's about that big all the way up to the big cylinder. So whatever your preferred brand is, JBL makes a pretty bargain speaker. You're going to play that through a Bluetooth connection or a wired connection. You know, again, you're probably going to play that from your phone or your iPad. If you're recording with your phone, maybe it's playing through your computer or your iPad or other device. You can put that on a music stand just out of shot. You know, you don't want to put it far away, so you're going to run over and start the recording and then run back. You know, you put it in a place where you're easily able to reach it. You press it. You've given yourself a lead time that you've decided upon. It's there. It records. Talk a little bit more about that in a moment. The sound check, super important. You want to go in the order of your singing, then the piano. Sing your loudest stuff. You can put the accompaniment on so that you're in tune, or have your pianist play. Sing all the loudest sections. Monitor the decibel levels. If you're in red, turn the gain down. If you're in yellow, turn the gain up, right? Be comfortable with your singing. Then turn on the piano recording or have your pianist play. If you're playing with the piano, you're not really going to have to worry about setting the volume because the piano is the piano. If you're using a recording, then put the volume on a level that you can hear and then place the speaker relative to the mic out of sight, right? Probably on the floor or right outside left, right outside right, so that the microphone doesn't distort, right? You've got the mic at the level for you. You're not distorting it. You've got the speaker at a level you can hear. You place it in proximity between you and the microphone so that it gets a good balance and doesn't distort. Again, if you're recording with a live pianist, which hopefully you're able to do, none of that matters because the volume is going to be the volume. A pre-screen or a recorded audition, you don't need to get into a mic for you, mics for the piano, ambient mics for the hall. You don't need that. Maybe 1 in 1,000 people will do that. And it's probably because they're super rich and that's why they do that. That does not make or break your recording. It will make a very slight difference, nothing that is impactful to you all. If you are recording with a piano accompaniment, when you're setting up your files, give yourself a countdown, you know, a 5, 4, and then it would start, right? So that you can have the boomer pause. That's why I'm Gen X, but it's why we do it, right? We're used to having to leave ourselves enough lead time in and lead time out so that we can fade up and fade down. So you give yourself that comfortable time. That all goes into it. And then that brings us to an important question about microphone equipment. I recommend this right here, the MV88 Plus by Shure. It pairs with your phone. It is not the MV88. That's a thing that plugs into your phone and kind of rides right here on board. The MV88 Plus connects with a cable to Lightning or USB-C, whatever you have, and it's a cable to an outboard condenser microphone. It's top of the line USB connectable stereo paired condenser microphone that you can buy. It costs $250, which is well worth it considering the quality it gives you. You can use the app that goes with it, the Motive app by Shure. You can set your gain, you can set your curves, you can save all those things so they're there for you in the room and you can use them. If you want to level up and go to an XLR mic, you're going to want a condenser microphone and you're going to need an interface to do your recording. That to me is really not worth it. It's kind of like miking the room and buying a camera other than this. Is there a difference? Yes. But unless you're in the stereo room, in the audio store, you can't hear the difference between this $1,000 one and the mega super ultra $1,000 one, unless you're listening side by side. So there's really not an advantage, in my opinion, to going condenser and interface. I would just recommend get this Shure MV88 Plus, pair it with your phone, invest in a microphone stand. You've got your phone stand, and you can set up all of that equipment as you need it. That's what I recommend. Those are the pointers that I use. If I were recording, you know, if you said, "Hey Scott, I'd like to hire you, come and record my auditions," I would bring my gear, but I would do the same stuff. If you hire anyone else, they'll bring their gear. They'll do these same things, but just with your phone and with, I recommend the Shure MV88 Plus. There are other microphones like Yeti and etc. This one's just the best. I've tested them all. It gives the best recording for operatic voices, in my opinion, to my ears and some colleagues' ears. And unless you step up and level up to an interface and an XLR microphone and phantom power and all of those things, it's going to give you the best bang for your buck. It's very portable, it's very durable, etc. So those are the things that I wanted to share. I'm sure there's lots of questions or maybe no questions, but those are the things that I would recommend you do. So thanks for listening. And what questions do you have? I'm going to stop the share so that I can see the chat and all those things.
So students and colleagues here in the room, if you've got something you'd like to ask, please ask it in the chat. Ellen will offer questions here for Scott in just a moment. So go ahead and populate the chat with any questions that you have. Scott, thank you so much for that information. It was quite helpful, I think, in kind of framing how to get the best quality audition with the maximum effect for minimal effort, I think, overall, for everybody to be able to do it with what they have in their devices and with what they have on site.
Thanks, Josh. Marcy has a question. What's a softbox? A softbox is a filter that goes in front of a light. It's mostly used in filming. So if you've ever, again, seen those sort of cutaway shots, the lighting fixture might be the size of my iPad here, but then there's like a round or a rectangular box in front of it. And it has like a semi-opaque fabric and inside reflective material. So it takes the light coming out of the source, it bounces it around a little bit, and it filters it through that fabric so that it's softened. They're not always box shape, but it comes from that shape. And so it softens that. The ones that they sell for consumers, it's kind of like those old pop-up tents you could get from IKEA. Like there's a wire in it, and you got to figure out like how to turn it and close it. And if it's not just right, it's like boing, and it smacks you in the face. But it's one of those things. And they attach to the front of the light. I do have a Yeti, never used it. How to use it with my phone. Initially was going to use it for GarageBand. You have to check with Yeti and see the connectivity. Out of the back of it, is it, do you know what model you have? You could see if it's USB. It's probably might be USB-A, like the slightly square USB, or it might be like the mini USB. Whichever one that is, you would connect that from your microphone to your phone. And Yeti might make an app for it. You can use the Motivate app by Shure to actually record. But the nice thing about using the Motivate app from Shure with the MV88 Plus is that you can actually tune and set the microphone, different angles, different patterns of pickup, And you can experiment with those things to see how they best record. So that's, I could do a deeper dive into the Yeti, but I think you can look for that. The reason Yetis are great, the reason I don't like them as much for singing is that I've never seemed to be able to get around some kind of inherent compression and filtering that's built in, like baked into the product. So I've never been able to kind of zero it out. Like they've tuned it very well for like a broad use, but when it comes to opera singing, I've found that like it does a thing that I don't want it to do. So that's how I found my way to the MV88 Plus. A link to the presentation. Yes. Josh, is it easiest if I send that to you and you can send that out?
Yes, it'll be great. I'll send it out and I'll have Jordan
Great,
share
I'll do
that
that.
when they share out the actual webinar recording.
And if you do have an XLR and an interface, would I recommend the MV88 Plus? Unless you have another way to connect, or if you wanted to record separately the audio with your microphone and your interface and the video. And you can do that with just pressing record on the audio, pressing record on the video, and giving yourself the clap sound that will give you a line on the amplitude display, and you can sync up that way. But yeah, I mean, if you have the financial means, the $250 investment in the MV88 Plus is definitely worth it. If for nothing else, I know there are students and faculty, it's an easy thing to let your students use. To just say, hey, it's here in the studio, check it out, plug it into your phone. Here's the tripod, the microphone, just plug it in. Just be sure that they don't bump it on a door, because when they bump it on a door, it breaks the hardware. So from experience. Using external microphone, does the sound automatically sync with the video? How do you sync them? If you're using an external mic on your phone, such as the MV88 Plus, automatically will sync. If you're doing it another way, you have to sync it that way. I mean, unless you have different software, and you could be recording even software like Panopto, which I know we all have. If you set the settings right, you can record from any source using something like a cam link, which takes an HDMI signal and makes it USB, and then you can down convert that from USB to USB-C if you need to. But yeah, it depends on your hardware and your software. But if you have the MV88 Plus and you use your phone, it's just all synced up together. Recording the internal iPhone mic, it's not great. The internal mic on the iPhone, I mean, in a pinch, it'll do, and sometimes we got to do what we got to do. It's better than no recording. I find that with some voices it sounds okay. It's always going to be limited, and with some voices rather than others, it's okay. I haven't sung for like 20 years. I had a noisy voice, so it didn't matter what kind of microphone I used. I always sounded bad. So yeah, if you have any way to get any kind of an external, or if there's like a departmental purchase, or if all students go in together and like $25 here combined, you get 8 or 9 students, that they can go all together on it. It definitely, it's a huge upgrade over the onboard microphone here. Any other questions?
Do you have a tripod brand or style recommendation?
Small Rig makes some cool stuff. Here I have a Small Rig thing. I don't have any gear on it right now, but it's Small Rig, right? And this like clamps onto a table, and then you can put any kind of tripod on that, and it telescopes, and it telescopes again. So it gets pretty long off of the table. That can give you a nice thing, especially I use this a lot in one of our rehearsal halls. Like the stage is elevated, but the Hamburg Steinway D is up there, so everybody wants to record with that. And so they're already like 4 feet elevated, so you got to get really tall with the camera. So I have a standing desk that I crank up and put this on. Small Rig makes some good things. Newer, again, that company Newer, Neewer, They make some decent things. Make sure that you measure your phone. Like I have an OtterBox on mine because I drop it all the time. And there are some that won't fit around it, but you want to find one, I don't like that like springy ones, like the ones that actually let you set it and kind of click it in. And, those usually run for a nice one. They're like $30. You can get like cages that hold the phone and all kinds of things. But I would say small rig, newer, even like Amazon Basics. I've got a couple of Amazon Basic fluid head tripods that I've liked. Yeah, if you're in the market, again, small rig, have like a little fluid head tripod that'll mount. It's basically like a mini version of the giant cinematic things, which when you're filming a pre-screen or recorded audition, you don't need to do any panning, tilting, or zooming. However, if you have to do your own live streaming, like many of us do, then something like this, this thing right here is very, very useful. It's tiny. See how big it is. So I didn't plan to talk about it. It just happened to be with me on my desk. It's that big. There's my phone. But the action that it has on it is one that allows you to have very smooth, like panning and tilting and leveling. So you can put this thing on your desk, put this thing on top of it, and then just screw in whatever bracket is holding your phone. And even if you have to live stream from your phone, you can get a really pretty smooth pan, tilt, action out of it. And it'll, it's still live streaming from your phone, but it looks a lot prettier. The idea that you record with your phone, you should be able to use that. You can use it directly. You can edit it right on your phone. I always like to slate, not when I'm recording with students, because it's kind of nerve-wracking. So I always say, we'll record your slates later. You wear the same thing and you can get a giant whiteboard and write the cues and put them right behind the camera. So it's like a giant cue card so they get everything correct. But that's the only thing that you might need to like crossfade together. But something like iMovie or whatever software is inherent on your machine. The company Blackmagic or DaVinci, the parent company, they have a software suite called DaVinci Resolve. DaVinci Resolve is free. And the only thing you can't do with the free version is access a graphics processor accelerator chip on your computer. So for doing things, minor editing like ins and outs and, splicing together your slating and your fade out, DaVinci Resolve will do all of that. If you've ever used like Final Cut or Adobe, anything like that, it's very similar, but it's free. It's kind of happy to use. The size of the room matter. Yes, it does. I always like, if the room sounds good, the recording will sound good. The better the room sounds, the better the recording will sound. If it's too dry of a room, the recording will sound dry. And unless you're an expert in audio engineering, it's hard to tune the room and it's hard to add a little reverb. It always sounds wonky. So if you have access to it, my best suggestion is reserve a couple of days for your students, like batch days, where you can even have, take a couple of minutes, take 20, 30 minutes to set up the camera and the mic and the piano and the lights. You're setting up lights, give yourself an hour and a half, but get all that ready and then just have them come in one after another and do their thing. And if you have a couple of days like that spread out, then, if Johnny is sick and Sarah is ill, then they can come back the next day or, a couple of days later. And that tends to help because then you can batch that. You've got the good room, the good piano, the good accompanist, the good setup, and you kind of flow people through. Some students, I make them nervous, so I leave. Other students not, and I just sort of sit, I just press the button and I sit there quietly and press the button again. But it can also be all self-automated. One student can press record, they can walk up, they can stand, give themselves a 5-second in, start their thing, give themselves a 5-second out, press the button at the end. Nobody asked, but I will say for those students who are recording, if you're going to run the piece, press record, because a lot of times people run the piece and it's awesome. And they're like, shoot, I wish I had pressed record. So if you're gonna run the piece, press record. And unless it's an absolute train wreck dumpster fire, keep going. If you mess up like the first entrance, okay, cool, stop. But everybody on this call and all the colleagues everywhere who listen, we know it's not going to be perfect. We know within a couple of seconds if we want to schedule you for a live audition, and whether or not you mess up one measure, 17 measures in or here or there, it doesn't really matter. And so I've seen a lot of people just go down a rabbit hole of misery because they're trying to get perfect. So if you make a mistake, unless it's at the very beginning and you really want to restart, just like in a performance, just keep going like you would in a live audition, like you meant it to happen, like it's supposed to be that way. And those of us who are listening and know will be like, wow, good for them. They messed up and they didn't telegraph it. Likely 97% of the people, we're going to hear what we want to hear in the first couple of seconds and be like, yep. So.
Great. If anybody else has questions, please let us know. We've got a few more minutes here. I'll leave the chat open. As we're waiting for our final couple questions, I'd like to thank our wonderful guest speaker, Scott Skiba, for sharing all of this great information on recording and preparing your audition. I know all of us in the room are grateful for it, and I'm sure all of those that will watch this recording and review all of your wonderful information here, we will have the best recordings possible. And I think it's really fruitful for us as faculty, but also for students in the room to share that information with your colleagues, because we want to see you at your best in an audition as you get ready for graduate school auditions, young artist auditions, company auditions. What you share as a product can really make a difference in how people view you as a professional. So I'm grateful for Scott for sharing that information and letting us have it to share with our membership and our students out there in the world, because it makes a big difference hearing that from a professional and gathering all this in one place, in one space. So thank you, Scott.
Thank you. My pleasure.
So if we don't have any more questions, I'll do a short wrap up here. I want to thank again our guest speaker. Scott, can you share a little bit more information about where we can find you and what you'll be doing next in the world?
Sure. You can find me a couple of places. I'm the director of opera studies at Baldwin Wallace Conservatory. I'm also the interim director of opera theater for University of Tennessee in Knoxville. Baldwin Wallace is undergrad only, so if you're interested in studying voice performance at an undergrad only place, come check us out. A lot of great stuff going on there. We just closed our fall production in Playhouse Square of Radamisto in a post-apocalyptic graphic novel setting. So we always do something early in the fall, something new and by a composer of color in the winter, and something like standard rep, kind of happy. This year we've got Radamisto and Speed Dating and Orpheus. Last year we had Cesare taking up Serpents and Merry Widow, et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of great stuff going on there. And if you're looking for grad school, UTK is a great grad program where the grad students are the resident artists for Knoxville Opera. That's part of why I can present right now, and I'm sitting in the dark rehearsal room, is that all the students are a couple of blocks away in their tech week for Knoxville Opera. Dean Anthony's directing that, so great opportunity to work with more folks and make connections and get out in the world. And then if you're interested to go to Hawaii and study on the Big Island and learn and perform on the Big Island of Hawaii, we're doing Nozze di Figaro, and we're doing a little night music. Those applications are open. Priority casting deadlines are December 15, so please apply. That's actually where I think Josh and I met, or we might have met, but we worked together at the Hawaii Performing Arts Festival. So a lot of great opportunities. So I hope to see you all there, and hope to connect with you all in the world and elsewhere, and all the great things.
One other place that you can meet Scott is at our upcoming national conference in Savannah, Georgia. So I hope you'll come and join us this January. We're going to have an incredible opportunity for our colleagues, both from NATS and from NOA. If you're new to our organization and have come upon our webinar, we welcome you to join us. And you can join us by going to NOA.org and experiencing our beautiful opera platform there. There are student resources there for students I'm trying to discover more and learn more about it. I see that some people have already registered for the conference. I love that. That's amazing. We're going to have some really unique opportunities with SCAD there. I hear some brilliant new opera there, as well as our wonderful collaboration with NATS and our NOA members, as always, and our vocal competition. We have so much to offer for everyone coming, and I can't wait to celebrate all of the great singing and all of the things we do at opera and with NATS at our upcoming conference. If you have questions or would like to follow up with me, you're welcome to email me. You're welcome to follow up with all of the information from our webinar. I'll again share this recorded version to post on our website under our webinar area. I'll also get the information from Scott to also post that PDF so you can follow along and curate your beautiful auditions to share with everyone in the next coming season of auditions for you. If anyone else has other questions, please let us know. Students, we have some great programming for you. Again, Ellen has plugged here in our chat. We have some networking events for you to come to. We have all sorts of sessions and workshops and creative activities for you to be part of. So students, we welcome you to our conference. New members and old members alike, we can't wait to see you in Savannah. And I hope you have a wonderful night. Thank you all for attending this webinar. And I wish you all the best as you continue forward towards your opera journeys this fall. Thank you all very much, and I wish you a good night.
Thank you.